This is the Brisbane Lions Fancast with Dom Fay and Michael Whiting.
Yes, welcome to the round 3 edition of the Fancast. Sadly, we are still winless for the year, Mike, but there are plenty of positives to take out of round 2, just as there were for round 1.
Yeah, I agree with you, Dom. I think the first two performances have been very encouraging from the Lions. Of course, they played Hawthorn, the Premiers, and Geelong preliminary finalists from last year, so it was always unlikely that Brisbane was going to win one of those first two games. But I've been genuinely pleased and slightly surprised at how well Brisbane's played. There was a lapse the other day against Geelong just before half-time and sort of the first half of the third quarter, but all in all, I think it's very encouraging so far.
Yeah, I was pretty impressed, I think, with the defensive mindset on the weekend. Not so much from the back six, but from the whole side. I think we were doing a pretty good job in the midfield of stopping them getting the ball through. But I think our number one issue and what ended up foiling us on the day was just our ball handling. They were just a lot cleaner than us they were tough conditions to be slick with the ball, but they were a lot cleaner than we were.
Spot on. You can just see the experience, can't you? Like when people talk about experience, that's one of the things that you get from it. The guys that have played 6 and 8 and 10 years as opposed to the guys that have played 2 and 3 and 4 years. So, the ball handling was a bit of an issue in the wet, and there was a couple of, I guess, simple errors that Justin Lepich pointed to after the match, just before half-time, particularly a couple of one-on-one losses that led directly to goals that you can look back on. But you're spot on when you talk about that defensive setup. You can see that now, can't you? Like, it's something that's sort of been talked about during the pre-season, and now we've seen it 2 weeks in a row, and the lines look far more difficult to break down. They're not coughing up runs of goals. I mean, there was 3 goals quickly on Sunday, but generally speaking, that's about the extent of it. There's not 5 and 6 and 8 goals coming in a quarter that we saw so often, in 2013.
Yeah, and you feel like we're in the game from the start through till, near the very end. You feel like we are genuinely a chance. I think it was the thing that I did pick up on the most, though, that there were times where it looked like we were set up for a good bit of ball movement forward and potentially a scoring shot, but one player would miss a mark, miss a handball, someone would fumble the ball, suddenly Geelong would get it, turnover, and it's a goal like that. And I think that was just what ended up being the difference between the two sides on the weekend.
Yeah, not too much difference, is there? Like, look, Brisbane getting their hands on the ball just as much. I think clearances and contested possessions were quite similar from memory, so they're doing the hard things well, and I wouldn't say it's the easy things, the ball handling, because that can be tricky in the wet, but I guess it's the polish that coaches talk about, and sometimes that comes across as cliches in post-match press conferences and things like that, but that's the truth, isn't it? There's just that little bit of polish, and Brisbane just not quite able to execute, and just those little things like the red time goals just before half-time, coughing up 3 goals in 2 minutes. I mean, that just kills you. Instead of going in with the lead, you're going in with your head down and coming out after half-time, and the same thing happens again. So just little things to work on, but I'm genuinely impressed with Brisbane's first couple of matches.
So if you were Justin Lepich sitting there right now after your first 2 matches as a senior coach, after your first pre-season as a senior coach, do you reckon you'd be pretty happy with the way the team started, or do you reckon he'd be sitting there thinking there's a fair bit of work still to do?
Yeah, pretty happy, I think. I mean, it's hard to say you're happy when you're 0-2, and the bare facts are they've lost by 8 goals and 4 goals in the first 2 matches. But I think considering the level of the opposition, and we can see from both of those matches that the opposition hasn't taken Brisbane lightly. Hawthorn was switched on all pre-season. They were switched on round 1, and Geelong came up here with a definite mindset of making sure there was no repeat of the huge upset and the huge comeback in 2013. So considering the opposition's probably thrown close to their best at Brisbane both times, I think the Lions can see there's light at the end of the tunnel. I don't think the tunnel's that long at the moment. It's not too far away from turning their fortunes around. So all in all, I think Justin Lepich would have to be pretty happy.
Which leads us into this weekend's game, which is probably the first realistic chance for a win for the Lions this year. But it is a big one. It is probably the first time the Lions have gone into a Q Clash likely as the underdogs in most people's eyes.
Yeah, when we've recorded this, they're the underdogs with the bookmakers, and I probably think rightfully so. I don't think there's much in it, and as a genuine tipster, and I'll probably change my mind, 4 or 5 times before I log my tips on Friday. Although on our website this week, I have had to preview the game, and I've tipped the Gold Coast by 10 points. But it's a very difficult match, genuinely, to tip. I think both clubs there. We've almost found that level ground at the moment. I think the Suns are probably on the way up, and Brisbane's just probably starting to turn the wheel in the same direction. So very difficult matchup. A little bit more class, I think, with Gold Coast, but very good system with Brisbane, which I think will keep them in the match for a long time. And as they've shown previously in Q clashes, if it's tight, they've got their nose over the line.
does someone like an Andrew Rains get a look in for
It's
Ablett?
an interesting one, isn't it? I think the Rains is an interesting one. He's obviously sort of out of favour at the moment. He hasn't played either of the senior matches so far, but Rains has traditionally gone to Ablett. We saw Crowley do his usual run-with-roll with Gary last week and did a very good job. I think he kept him to 24 disposals and kept his influence fairly minimal. Rains has done a pretty good job. Gaz has got his touches in previous Q clashes, and he has won the Ashcroft medal once before, but hasn't been overly influential. There hasn't been a dominant Gary Ablett performance, so it must be tempting to bring Andrew Rains back. Is that the way you look at it? I think it's difficult because he has done a good job in the past, but he seems to be out of favour at the moment.
My personal prediction is we're going to see Rockcliffe go to Ablett on the weekend. I think they put Rockcliffe on Mitchell, obviously, back in round 1, and I think that's going to be a kind of thing that you'll see Rocky do a fair bit this year. Not so much in a tagging role, just in a head-to-head role, and I think you'll see Rocky and Ablett head-to-head this weekend is my tip.
I think the tricky part there is that Rocky did a very good job on Sam Mitchell, I think, in the first round. Sam Mitchell plays a lot across half-back, so Rocky's able to play as that defensive forward, and Rocky can hurt you in the foot when he plays forward, which he did, and he kicked 3 goals and probably split that matchup with Mitchell. Whereas Gaz doesn't play in the back half too, or he certainly won't station himself in the back half. And if Rockcliffe plays with him, Gaz will take him to the forward line and play an attacking brand of footy against him. So I think that's a tricky matchup. You're right, though. Obviously, Rockcliffe can play and has played that role occasionally before, so he might share time with someone they might hand over quite often through the match. But it'll be very interesting to see, because I think what Collingwood showed against Gold Coast last year is you don't want to let Gary Ablett run free. He ran right and had 49 touches and 2 goals against them, and Nathan Buckley admitted afterwards he made a mistake by not sending someone to him. So I think whatever happens, you've got to send someone to Gary Ablett, because you've got to minimise his influence. There's no two ways about it.
You absolutely do. And I think outside of the Rockcliffe thing, though, I'm not sure we're going to see any changes to the side this week. You think Rockcliffe in potentially? Well, there's a few who he could come in for. I mean, that's probably luck of the draw, really. But I do think that outside of that, that'll probably be a pretty settled lineup. Would you be on the same page as that?
Yeah, I would be, definitely. I mean, we touched on the potential for Rains to come in. Harwood potentially might come back in. But I guess one of the interesting ones for me from last weekend and a talking point out of the match was the very big lineup that Brisbane played. They had three very tall defenders in Merritt Clark and Jordan Lyle, and used Joel Patfull as a 4th defender. Is that something you could see the Lions going again? It was something that I don't think worked. I didn't think would work before the match, and ultimately I don't think it worked for the balance of the team. And the forward line, another week together with the combination of Brown, Close, Paparone, and the resting Ruckman. I thought it's probably not a heap of opportunities again, and difficult conditions in the wet, but had their moments again. Do you see that gelling more the second time around?
See, I'd love to give Buick another go in there, because I think Buick does offer a different element up forward, so I'd like to see him be given that go. I also think Sam Mays should be played almost permanently as a forward from now on, as good a midfielder as he can be.
It's interesting with Mays, isn't it, that he looks like he does his best work forward, doesn't he? I think ultimately he'll be a midfielder and a winger, but geez,
when you can kick 4 against Geelong.
And he can find space, can't he? He finds space there, and he's done very well playing that forward role.
Yeah, and Brown has lifted to a level I don't think any of us thought he was still capable of.
He's an interesting
to be honest.
case, Brown, isn't he? He's kicked. I mean, the bottom line is he's kicked 6 goals in 2 weeks against Hawthorn and Geelong, which is a terrific effort for a key forward. And I was watching on Sunday thinking that Harry Taylor was just giving him a bath in the first 2.5 quarters, but then Brownie just, I guess through his work rate and through his smarts, he was able to find space, and he had 4 set shots at goal in the last quarter and a half, finished with 2-2. Probably could have kicked 3 or 4 and found his way into the best players. He just worked hard for 4 quarters and found space and did a damn good job. He's kicked 6 in 2 weeks, so a terrific effort from Brownie.
Definitely. It's going to be a great game on Saturday afternoon, and I think both of us are very much looking forward to this one to see who can come away with the 4 points. We're going to chat to someone who's probably got quite high stakes of investment in this game because of the fact he is from the Gold Coast and was overlooked by the Gold Coast. Dane Zorko on the Fancast after this.
The best way to keep track of everything Lions is to head to lions.com.au. It's the first place to find the latest Lions news and videos, get the lowdown on upcoming games, results and player stats. There's also great ways to interact with live chats, downloads and Player of the Year voting updates. And with a social media hub, you can connect with all the Lions social media activity. Lions.com.au. Everything Lions, all in one place.
We're joined on the Fancast today by someone who will be very much enjoying the chance to go out and play well against the Gold Coast again, the side that did overlook him. It is Dane Zorko. How are you feeling about this weekend's game, Dane?
Yeah, obviously it's a pretty important game for the club. Being 0-2 is not a fantastic start, but hopefully we can go down the Gold Coast and try and get the win, and that'll make things a little bit better.
From a player's point of view, Dane, what have you made of the first 2 weeks? You touched on there, 0-2, not ideal from a win-loss perspective, but surely you must have taken a few positives out of those first couple of matches.
Oh, absolutely. I think it hasn't been the worst start. I mean, we've come up against two preliminary final sides last year, and to match them in majority of the contest, probably our own lapses that have been in the third and fourth quarters that have probably killed us. That's about it. Contested football-wise, we've matched it with the best. So we take a lot of confidence out of that, and we know that if we can keep plodding along and hopefully get a four-quarter effort, then anyone will be beatable on their day.
In terms of your personal form, obviously you had a great debut season, and it was a little bit up and down. I'm sure you'd admit that yourself last year. What about this year, though? It seems that you've gone to a whole new level in the first two games this year, particularly on Sunday. I think in a midfield role, it was just about the best football we've seen you play. How do you feel you're tracking at the moment?
Yeah, well, obviously pre-season was pretty important for me. My first one was a little bit interrupted. My second one wasn't that flash, so I had a massive emphasis on coming in and having a really good pre-season, and I felt like I've done that, and now I feel like I've got a sizable engine that can go in the in midfield and play longer stints in the midfield. I guess my first year I was fortunate enough to play in the midfield, but not so much last year. So I guess that's just I've been fortunate enough to play a little bit more time in the midfield this year, and hopefully I can continue on my form. But first and foremost, it's getting the side a win. So it's much better playing good football in a winning side than a losing side.
Just before we come back to the team, Dane, just a bit more on your pre-season. I think for me, I rocked up to your first pre-season session this year and you had a 2K time trial straight away, and to me you were noticeably the big improver. Like, you came out straight away first session and I guess showed everyone how fit you were. What had you done in that off season? You don't have much chance to sort of get fit there, but it had seemed that you had got extra fit. What had you done in that period of time?
Well, just the program, to be honest. My first pre-season wasn't coming into it. I hadn't done really a hell of a lot of stuff with Broadbeach and that, but I felt like my first pre-season was really good up until I got injured, and then last year I obviously wanted to manage it a little bit better, and I probably just got a few things wrong there. And this year, I just did the program what Brett Burton had set up for me, and yeah, I guess it worked. I had a really good break mentally and physically, so I think that helped a lot, and I came back ready to go. So I think it's important that you do get that mental break as well as a physical break.
And from what Leper has indicated to you, do you think you'll be playing much more of a midfield role this year than a forward role?
Oh, it's hard to say. Obviously, round one, Rockcliffe played on Mitchell and pretty much went with the go-to role there. So me and him just did a pretty much clean swap. And last round, obviously, with Rocky missing, I probably filled in his spot. So I'm not too sure where I'm going to be playing going down the track, but it's always great to get in there and play in the midfield up against the best. So hopefully I can play a little bit more midfield, but either way, I'm just happy to fill my role in for the team, whether it be midfield or forward.
Just talking about the midfield role, Dane, obviously it's the key to most weeks, winning or losing, I guess, but this weekend particularly, can you tell us what you think about Gold Coast midfield with Ablett, O'Meara, Swallow, Prestia, etc., etc.?
Well, I think you've just named it there, mate. They're a very classy outfit. They're young, full of energy, and that's something we've got to match up with. Obviously, they're coming back on their home ground. They don't want to lose another Q clash, so you always want to go out to a Q clash and win, and really want to assert our dominance as the number one side in Queensland, and hopefully we'll match up against them this weekend. Obviously, it's going to be impossible to stop Garrick. I don't think anyone's been successful in doing that yet, so we're just going to have to nullify him as best as we can, and hopefully place a lot tighter on O'Meara and those Prestia guys who seem to get a lot of the ball. So we'll do our homework on them Thursday and then switch our focus back onto us and prepare ourselves for the game.
Dane, it's the first time that the Lions have gone into a Q clash really as underdogs. Does that change your approach? Has it even registered to you, or are you completely irrelevant or completely not even concerned about what the general public thinks about the matchup?
Yeah. Probably the second one, mate. Not really thinking about who's going in favourite, who's going in underdogs or anything like that. A Q Clash is a totally different match. It's starting to become a really good rivalry, and with the Gold Coast on the up, and we're obviously wanting to be on the up as well. I think it's going to be a fantastic contest.
What does the rivalry mean, Dane? There's been a bit sort of spoken about the last year or two that it's sort of struggling to get off the ground. Brisbane sort of won about, I think it's 5 in a row at the moment. You're a Gold Coast boy. They did overlook you and traded you to Brisbane. What does it mean to you and the Brisbane Lions as a whole, this rivalry against the Gold Coast?
Oh, well, as I said earlier, I think you just want to be the number one side in Queensland. I think that's what we're striving to be, and that's what they're striving to be. So that adds a whole new other dimension into it. Obviously, we're probably the bigger brother to some circumstances. So obviously they're going to want to take that off us. But I think it's just going to be fierce. It's just a totally different mindset and feeling when you go out there. The game's probably not going to be pretty and free flowing like everyone's game plan probably wants to be. It's just going to be a slog out there, and it's just going to be a massive grind, and hopefully the boys are up for it.
On a personal note, Dane, I'm just curious to know, because there was a lot of talk in the media and out of the club when you got recruited, that for the first few months, the first year afterwards, you were still very much almost a kid in a candy store, living your dream, playing professional AFL footy. Into your third season now, does that sense of living your dream still exist? Does it become a bit more work now, or does it feel still like you are living the dream?
I think it's a bit of both, mate. Obviously, it's always great coming into a fantastic place like the Gabba and doing your work out of there. And I guess I feel very fortunate to be able to do that every day. But yeah, it's business now. Like, we obviously, you don't want to just float through the system. You want to get the most out of it as possible, and really strive to do the best you can and be the best you can. So I guess it's the candy store bit's probably dulled down a bit now, but it's obviously great to always be there. But now it's getting down to being in the system and playing for premierships, mate. That's what everyone's playing for. So I think that's what the goal is now.
Just one more on the nuts and bolts of winning on Saturday afternoon, Dane. Obviously, you mentioned before about the contest not always being free-flowing and being a scrap. That's generally how you've sort of got over Gold Coast in the past. Do you like sort of slowing the pace down against them because they are young and have that extra speed on the outside?
I don't know if it's been intentional, mate. I just think that's just what the contest is. It's no one wants to give an inch out there. So I think it's probably going to be one in tight on the weekend. I don't think it's going to be too much of an outside kind of game. So I don't really think that we ever try and stop that. I think that's just how the contest seems to work out, that it's nice and tight and close and physical going.
Well, all the best for the game on Saturday afternoon. Hopefully the Lions can make it 6-1 against the Gold Coast, and we'll be supporting you and look forward to seeing you play on the weekend.
Thanks, guys. Thanks for having me.
Looking ahead to this week's matches, the reserves play at Metricon Stadium as a curtain raiser to the seniors match. That game will kick off at 11:50am, and then the seniors will be running out to play their match at 3:40pm. That will be, as most games up here have been, an hour earlier than it normally would be for daylight savings. It will be a hotly fought contest, I think, Mike, and I don't quite know how it's going to pan out at the moment.
Neither do I. Like I touched on earlier, I think I'm going to change my mind a few times, but I'll stick with Gold Coast in a very tight... I think either way it's going to be tight. They've traditionally been quite tight contests, particularly in the last year or two. They're very scrappy. It's not attractive football. There won't be much in it all day, I think, but I'm just leaning towards the Gold Coast. Wouldn't be surprised either way, but think they've got a very good home record of late. They've won 9 out of their last 14 at Metricon. I think that might be just enough to get them over the line.
I think this is our best chance for a win in the first 5 rounds. Obviously, after this, we've got Port Adelaide down in Adelaide and then Richmond up here, which, I mean, both games are winnable. You'd think we're going to be underdogs significantly, but they are winnable games. But this is the one where we've got our best chance at the first 4 points for the year. And I think that will motivate the boys to lift an extra notch. And also, against the Gold Coast after that first Q Clash, I think we always will lift an extra notch. So I think we'll get over the line. But as you said, I completely agree. It will be a very tight, very close game. If we do win, I think it will be by less than 2 goals. It won't be a big win by any stretch.
And that's what I think too. And we don't want to project doom and gloom, but I tell you what, I wouldn't. There won't be much fun being in Brisbane next week if they go 0-3 and Gold Coast get over the line. So, for the sake of everyone in Brisbane, let's hope the Lions can sneak a win, as they have done the past couple of times down at Metricon in very tight affairs.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll be back next week to review that match. Until then, this is the Fancast. Bye.
See ya.